Good evening and welcome to a writing vlog. I will be starting draft 2 of my novel tonight. If you're new here, hello, my name is Stephanie and I'm currently writing my very first book. And I have done a lot of work getting ready to write draft 2. I read draft 1, I completely replotted my book after reading draft 1, and then I outlined it, and I outlined it twice. I did an index card outline, which was kind of by scene, and then I did a chapter by chapter outline on my computer using my index cards. And now I'm ready to write. And I'm so excited because it has been weeks since I've written, and I kind of miss my cozy evening routine. I love writing at night. It's my favorite time to write. I'm also most creative then. And over the last few weeks, I've been basically like brainstorming and plotting and stuff like that, and I haven't really had any time to write. And I'm just really anxious to get back into the swing of things with that. This vlog will encompass the first 10,000 words of draft 2. I always think 10,000 words, like the first 10,000 words of any draft, is just such a huge accomplishment. And so I wanted to celebrate that with its own vlog. So to start draft 2, I plan to do a lot of things before I write each chapter. So I have my index cards. I got a little holder for my cards. And before I start a chapter, I'm going to look at my chapter by chapter outline on the computer and see what scenes I've put in that chapter. And then I'm gonna look at the corresponding scenes in my index cards. I wanna make sure I don't forget anything here. The chapter by chapter outline is very, very basic, and it doesn't even, I don't think it even includes everything on here. It was just kind of like, these few things happen in this chapter, these few things happen in the next chapter. This is a lot more, like I've got over 100 cards in here. It's much more detailed, and I will need to refer to this constantly. But I'm gonna review those, and then also I'm gonna review the corresponding chapter in my draft 1. I'm not going to copy and paste draft 1 into draft 2. There is just so much of draft 1 I'm not going to include that it's not worth copy and pasting. I'm just going to start writing draft 2 from scratch again. The reason for this is I'm not going to keep probably 75% of it. I've changed the plot so much that what I wrote isn't even relevant anymore. And then also, I really wasn't happy with my writing technique and my writing style. I've improved a lot since I started writing the very beginning of draft 1. But I want to kind of focus on a few different things going into draft 2 to make my writing better. So I'm going to focus on sentence structure and vocabulary and prose, and try to really vary my sentences and make my writing just a little more colorful and interesting. The other thing I want to focus on in draft 2 is the characters. I focus a lot on their external arc, which is where they were going, what they were doing, even why they were doing it, but I didn't really focus on what was going on with them mentally, like how are they feeling throughout this process, how are their thoughts changing. I didn't really cover that, and that of course is part of the story. I'm sure there's many more things I'm gonna try and do in the second draft, but I know I can't do everything, so I think it's just wise for me to focus on a few things to improve. And I think I'll make a lot more progress. I already think my plot is a million times better than what I had before, so that's a huge improvement. I am ready to go ahead and start writing. I spent most of the day cooking, cleaning, running errands, doing other things so I could free up all my time for tonight and over the next few days. So all I need to do now is get my cozy little setup going, and then I'll be ready to write. Day 2 of trying to reach 10,000 words. I actually think this is going to take a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. Last night I wrote around 1,000 words and it went really slow. That was 1,000 words in about 3 hours. Typically my word count per hour is around 800. So I should have written, let's see, 3 times 8. So I should have written like 2,400 words last night. Instead, I wrote 1,000. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I wanted to discuss, because since this is a second draft, I'm approaching it a lot differently than I was the first draft. The first draft was me just like getting this draft out as fast as I could. Who cares what the sentence structure was like? Who cares if it didn't make sense? If I had to change things later, that's how I was going to do it. This time around, I'm trying to be much more intentional with how I do things. So I spent a good bit of time just working on the first paragraph, trying to make it better. I also focused on varying my sentence structure because my first draft was a lot of she did this, he did that, and I'm trying to just make it better to read. So I spent some time revising that, but then also I used the first paragraph to really experiment with my writing style a little bit, and I kind of used it as practice to see what I really would do if I had the time to sit down and craft a really good paragraph. And it was a really good exercise because I found that once I did that, once I spent the time going through the first few paragraphs, being really intentional with what I was doing and editing it on the spot, that when I got to the following dialogue and the following paragraphs, it went a lot more smoothly, and I kind of just got in the zone, and my sentence structure was already better. You know, things were flowing. I was putting things in there to color the scene. Even though it took me a really long time to write last night, just 1,000 words, I think the quality of the 1,000 words is 1,000,000 times better. As always, I ended a scene last night. I am not done with the first chapter yet. Imagine that. So the first chapter has 2 scenes in it. And so I finished the first part, the first scene, and now today I'm gonna go on the second scene and probably even onto the next chapters. It's the afternoon right now, and I have the rest of the day to write. I'm kind of excited because I haven't had this large of a chunk of time to write in a long time. I ran errands this morning, as always. It's about to thunderstorm in like the next hour, and it's gonna thunderstorm all afternoon and all night and throughout the night, so I have to stay inside. I'm not going out. I'll be interested to see how much I write today, just because I have an extended period of time to write, and I won't be taking as many breaks as I did last night. Also, the scene I'm writing, the next scene, is not necessarily a scene that I wrote before. It has elements of a scene I've written before, but I'm taking this scene from the first draft, and it was in a totally different context, and I'm kind of reshaping it. The scene still contains the information needed at that time, but the characters and the setting that are in that scene are completely different. My goal with writing today is to finish the first chapter, which I know I can do, and then hopefully finish the second chapter. The first chapter, as I said, it's only one more scene left, and that's done. So I think I can do that this afternoon, and then this evening, the second chapter, I actually believe I can take a large chunk of that from the first draft. That's a chapter in a scene that I want to keep, so I will read that chapter. It's probably not written well, but at least I can read it and kind of transfer over the thoughts and some of the dialogue. That is going to be what I do for most of today. I feel confident that I can meet this goal today. We'll see. Things tend to happen a lot of times, but hopefully it'll work out, and I'll finish up chapter 2 today. Day 3 of attempting to reach 10,000 words on my first draft. In no way did I think it was really gonna take this long, but here we are. Yesterday I wrote about 2,000 words, so total I meant 3,000 words on my first draft. And that was 2,000 words over the course of 5 to 6 hours. Like I said yesterday, this is going so slow and I'm averaging like 400 words an hour. And a lot of the reasons I mentioned yesterday were still some of the same reasons I was going so slow last night. I think one thing that's also slowing me down, I think I talked about this yesterday, is I'm just having to organize a lot of the details. And it's stuff I don't want to do later. This was details that I put off in my first draft and said, I'm going to fix this in the second draft. And here I am at the second draft, so I need to fix them. And part of me last night was wondering, should I delay this more? As in, like, should I try and fix these things in the next draft? And I was like, no, if I already know that they need to be fixed, I need to go ahead and fix them now, because this is the draft where I really need to do that. So yesterday I did finish chapter 1, which was a great accomplishment. I finished chapter 1 before dinner, and then I started on chapter 2. I didn't really make it that far into chapter 2. So what I ended up doing in chapter 2 was starting out by condensing like 2 chapters of draft 1 into just a few paragraphs of chapter 2. And my intention with that was getting rid of a lot of superfluous information and scenes. Also, I wanted to move more quickly throughout the story. In the beginning, I did a lot of scenes in the first draft that were explaining things, like explaining more about the characters and their backstory and how they interact with each other. And while that's important, I wanted this time around in draft 2 to kind of accelerate the scenes and the motion of the book and drop in more of the backstory through conversation or other events happening in the book. What I found is if I've already written that particular scene or chapter in draft 1 and I carry it over into draft 2, it's a lot more quick for me to write. I already know what's happening. I don't have to figure anything out. I just have to fine tune either the dialogue or the description or the prose, and it in my head just flows a lot faster. When I'm trying to reorganize things or come up with a new scene, that's when it slows down a lot, because I want the new things to have the same quality as the things that are already there. The second scene of chapter 1 was pretty much new, and then the beginning of chapter 2 was pretty new. Now where I am in chapter 2, it is exactly the scene. It's not going to be word for word, but it's going to be pretty close. So hopefully I'll finish chapter 2 today. I'm not setting goals for myself anymore because I severely overestimate how well I will write in a day. So I'm just going to see how it goes, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with draft 1, where I'm tracking my word counts every day, and that will help guide me in terms of setting goals in the future. I don't think it's wise to set goals in the beginning anymore right now, just because I'm still going through the process and trying to get a handle on what I can actually accomplish doing it the way I'm doing it. I've pretty much accepted at this point that my word counts are going to be a lot less than they were with draft 1. And that's primarily because with draft 1, I was just going through it. My goal was to write as many words as I could in a certain period of time to get through the story, to not worry about fine-tuning the details or clarifying aspects of the story. And now that's not really my goal with draft 2. My goal with draft 2 is to improve the writing and make the story make a lot more sense than it did before. And those kinds of things take more time than just spitting out a story onto paper. It's interesting because when I went into draft 2, I thought it would be an almost identical process to draft 1, and it really isn't. It's completely different, which makes me wonder what like draft 3 and draft 4 and 5 are going to be like. I have no idea, but right now my focus is definitely on draft 2. Since I have 3,000 words and I have 7,000 left to reach 10,000, I've got a lot of work to do. I am going to work on it. It's the morning right now. I have a few errands to run this morning, but they should be quick, and then I'm going to work on this the rest of the day. But I'm hoping I make more progress today, especially because the scene that I'm working on right now is going to be very similar to what I already wrote. There's not going to be many changes. I'm just truly in this scene going to improve the dialogue and drop maybe a little more character stuff. So I'm hoping that goes quickly And then after that, I'll probably finish chapter 2 today. I really think I can. Moving into chapter 3. Chapter 3 will also be similar, but what will be different about chapter 3 is I need to add more, I guess, like internal thoughts of my characters. Chapter 3 is a very action heavy scene, and I was so busy explaining what was going on in the scene that I didn't really talk about like what the characters were thinking or doing. So I need to focus on that for chapter 3, but I'll worry about that later because I don't really know how far I'm gonna get into that. I should start it tonight, but I think if I do get to the point of starting it, I'm not gonna get very far through it because it's a very lengthy scene. It may or may not become 2 chapters. This is one of those chapters where I wrote it as 1 chapter in my chapter by chapter outline, but it could possibly be so long that it needs to be 2 chapters, and I won't really know till I write that. I am getting hungry. Part of my errands is to grab lunch. So I am gonna go start my errands, and then I will settle in for the entire day and write my book. Just a quick writing update. I'm at 1,700 words for the afternoon. I'm gonna take a break because I've been at it for hours. I will reach 5,000 words tonight. I'm at like 4,800 right now, and we'll see how much further I get tonight. It is the first time in a very long time that I'm going to write in the morning. The internet company is coming this morning to fix my internet, so I can't go out and run errands. I'm in my apartment, and I thought what better time to write than when I have to be in my apartment. I'm also looking forward to writing this morning because I haven't written in the morning in quite some time, and I know that I write well in the morning. I just tend to always do errands and things in the morning. And as a result, I just don't have time to write in the morning. I want to see if I'm productive this morning, and if I am, then maybe I'll start switching my schedule around so I can write at this time. Last night, or yesterday, went really well. I wrote, so yesterday I wrote 3,600 words, bringing me to a total of 6,700 words for the book. That was really good. So I can't remember exactly, but I think I wrote over 1,000 words yesterday afternoon. And then last night is when I wrote like the 2,000 words. I have to say, yesterday I said it would go easier because I had already written the scene, and that was a lie. In fact, what I noticed is if I was writing a scene that I hadn't written before, like I was inserting a new scene, I was able to write that so much more quickly than a scene I had already written. And the reason for that was if I had already written the scene in my first draft, I would have to go back and read it and look at it, and then I'd have to determine, do I want to keep this line? Does this description work? Does this still fall in line with the story? And I would have to like take and analyze all these pieces of my first draft and then incorporate it into the second draft. And I found that took much more time. There was a lot of thought involved, not so much writing. Yesterday afternoon, I finished up chapter 2, which was a scene I had already written. And then chapter 3, so yesterday chapter 3 did go a little more slowly just because, again, it was a scene I had written before. And I was trying to figure out, do I keep this part? Do I keep that part? And I ended up keeping a lot of it. So it was just me kind of rewording sentences and things like that. Chapter 4 is where I really made progress last night. I didn't even think I would reach chapter 4, and I did. And the beginning of chapter 4 consists of like 2 big scenes. And the first one was a new scene. I decided to add it to bring in some character stuff. So that was a brand new scene that I wrote, of course, because it was new and I had no context for it. I was able to write that scene really, really fast. Like, I just spit out that scene, and I ended on that scene last night. That was the last thing I wrote. And today I'm gonna pick up the next scene in chapter 4. And this will go slower because this is a scene I already had in draft 1, although I am gonna change it quite a bit. I wasn't happy with the direction I took with the first draft chapter, so I'm gonna change it a little bit. So I might have a little more freedom to come up with some new things for that. All right, it's time to write. I am gonna go make myself a quick breakfast and then settle in for the morning. Did it. I finally reached 10,000 words. It took 4 entire days, but I did it. Let's go through the word counts of today. This is crazy. I wrote 3,333 words today. I'm not lying. That's what it shows. And that brings me to a total overall of 10,036 words. I do want to talk about what I wrote today. So I finished chapter 4 and started on chapter 5. So the end of chapter 4, like I had predicted this morning, it was like a recycled scene from draft 1, but I had to change it a lot to fit like the new plot that I have for my story. So it pretty much was a rewrite. And then chapter 5, I took a chapter from draft 1 and condensed that into like 2 paragraphs. So again, that was easy because all I had to do was summarize what was already there. And then I took another scene in chapter, well, I don't know what chapter it was in draft 1, but I took another scene and I'm pretty much doing that again. But it's the same as before, where it's the same scene in the sense that the characters are in the same location and they're having the same type of discussion, but the discussion's different because, again, my plot changed. Overall today, there was not a lot of going back to my first draft to see what I wrote. It was a lot of me coming up with new stuff and rewriting the story, basically. So it went a lot faster than it has the last few days. I think me getting closer to that 10,000 words, I think when I ended last night, it was around 6,000 something. And so today I was like, if I work really hard, I can reach 10,000 words. And I really wanted to do that. So I think that was able to push me a little bit to be more productive today. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about what it's like to actually write draft 2. I'm 10,000 words in now, and this is truly a completely different process than draft 1. I am liking writing draft 2 so much better than I'm liking writing draft 1. And I think it's because I have the opportunity to fix things. There are things in draft 1 where as I was writing, I wasn't really happy with how a scene was going or the direction things may have been going in. And I was always like, okay, I'll just have to fix it later. And now I'm at the opportunity where I have to fix it. And it's really satisfying to sit down and come up with a solution to the problem, like, oh, I know how to fix this now, and then write that out. That's really fun for me. Also, I'm having a really good time trying to enhance my prose. When I think of it, I look at my sentences and I'm like, how can I make this sound better? I don't do this a lot just because my focus right now is plot. I'm working on prose a little bit, but my focus mostly is plot and character. But when I have the chance to work on my prose, I try to figure out how can I flourish it, make it sound better, make it sound more interesting. And that's really fun too. So I think one of my drafts is probably going to end up being like a line edit. Obviously, it won't be this draft. I'm going to probably back off of my prose work for now, just because I think there's a time for that later. As far as plot goes, I'm feeling really confident about that. The characters, I still feel like I need to push the envelope of how I'm conveying my characters' thoughts and their emotions. As I'm writing, a lot of times I'll be writing and I just say to myself, I already am like, this character is not angry enough, or this character isn't excited enough, and it's things I notice. I'm gonna leave my writing. I'm not gonna try and fix it right now because I think these are things that when I go back and make notes for draft 2, these are things that I'm gonna have to really sit down and figure out, how do I convey this via language? Like, how do I convey emotions via description or in a dialogue? And that's probably gonna take a little bit of time. And I wanna be really thoughtful about it. And my goal right now is to I really want a story that has a solid plot. I think that's gonna be my main goal for draft 2. I'm gonna work on the characters a little bit, but I really want a story with a solid plot. So once I have a solid plot, I can figure out how to work in the character stuff and work in the prose. One thing though that is still upsetting me is the amount of things that I keep forgetting to put in draft 2. And these are not things that are in my outline, my index card, or my chapter by chapter. These are things that I truly forgot about. Like the other day when I was working on chapter 3, I realized I forgot to mention something in chapter 1. Kind of, not necessarily foreshadowing, but just like mentioning world building that was necessary for the entire book. Forgot to mention it in chapter 1. And then by the time I got to chapter 3 and they were talking about it again, I was just like, crap, I forgot to do it. But then I had no clue like how to work it into chapter 1. And I was just like, you know what, that's gonna be a draft 3 thing, because I didn't want to go back chapters and rework them. That's not the purpose of this draft yet. It's mostly reworking the plot and making a smooth story. If it was something that like a character should have mentioned a few sentences ago, I probably would have gone back and added it. But at this point, I don't want to still go backwards in time as I'm writing. But other than that, I'm really excited about the progress I've made with draft 2. I'm 10,000 words in, a tenth of the way complete, and it only took 4 days. I say only, but honestly, I worked on this forever. It is a lot slower than draft 1 just because I'm fixing things, but I actually don't mind that. I'm enjoying kind of going about this a different way than draft 1. I'm looking forward to continuing working on draft 2. This is gonna be weeks probably of me working on this draft. So I'm not sure what my next vlog is gonna be about, but it'll be something related to draft 2. So I'll see you in the next vlog.